Hi everyone, it's Becky here. So here I am at Neck Point Beach, somewhere around Nanaimo. This is the last stop of my 2-day trip on Vancouver Island, and it's a glorious evening here. So yeah, I'm gonna do a 45-minute drawing and watercolors of the view in front of me sitting at a bench. So I'm just using a pencil just to do a very quick essential layout of the whole structure, not too many details. Okay, now I'm ready to draw freehand with my Winsor and Newton fine liner pen, which is waterproof because I'll be painting watercolors on top. Starting with this little island there in the distance on the horizon. And there are actually a number of heritage cabins over there. I think they're over 100 years old. So when you're sketching a landscape, the very first step that you need to be doing is actually to determine the placement of that horizon line on your page. Make sure it's not in the absolute middle. All right, so as you can see, my horizon line is a little bit higher from the absolute middle, which makes this sketch more interesting and less static. And now I am keep moving on towards the middle and the right side of the horizon line. Oh, before that, I want to sketch this little boat floating in the middle of the water. So it's been kind of spinning following the wind for a while now, and now the position is perfect to draw its outline compared to a foreshortened view. Yeah, this one is very much a mix of two large trapezoids and little details for windows and railings. And yeah, so sometimes boats can be a little tricky to draw. So basically I just want to trust what I see, start with the largest shapes that I see, and then the other essential details that really define that boat. Now I am keep stretching out this organic line a little bit higher, following my observation and using a blind contour technique to speed up my drawing. And this is the bottom of the bay there in the distance. And this part of the bay in the middle ground is tipping out a little bit into a sharp point. The bottom of this part is a little rough and rocky. So just following my sensation there and then curving around here towards the foreground area, the beach. So I'm using a pretty loose line here because I'm seeing a lot of overlapping of tall grass covering up most of the boundary line between the sea and the beach. So yeah, I'm just keep seeing the spirit of how these grass blades are growing. They are swaying in the wind. Here is Dudu walking past by. He climbed on a pine tree behind my bench. Okay, here we go, back to the drawing. So I am feeling a lot of creative freedom when drawing these grass because there's no need to copy. It's just very tiring to stare at all those details in front of you and try to copy. So just really relax and try to capture the overall rhythm. Really see how the wind is brushing over these grass blades and give them a sense of liveliness. All right, and just adding a bit of dried grass laying down here on the bottom of these grass blades. So here I have a combination of green and dried grass. When I'm drawing grass, I like to start from the bottom, close to the roots, and then swiping up my pen tip, just so the tips of these grass blades are thinner and looser compared to the bottom. And just keep going with this super relaxing technique of drawing these grass from the bottom and just swipe towards the top, and then adding a bit of dried grass texture on the bottom. Okay, now I want to move on to a different area. I just added that half moon over there in the sky, and now I'm drawing some houses there in the distance laying on the bottom of the bay, and some forest, masses of forest in between these houses. So here on the highland area, and I see some lamp posts and electricity posts in between. So here I am trying all my best to capture as many houses hidden in between the trees as I can. So if you're drawing a landscape like this, don't worry if you don't stress out if you missed a couple of these little details. For example, having a number of houses missing, that's okay. The point of sketching on location is to capture the overall atmosphere of that place and not the physical accuracy, because nobody's really gonna check how many houses are there. And just a few more lines for those trees, and that's it. Now I'm ready to move on to the foreground area to add these driftwoods hidden in between the grass there, adding a little accentuation for the tip of the bay here, and then starting to add the lapping water around the boundary line of the sea and the beach. And there's someone rowing a kayak. Just capturing that. And final accentuation around the base of the islands and the bay, using very gentle hand pressure and broken segments of lines for ripples on the water, just to give the sea surface a bit more movement. And just adding a few more lines there on the bottom of those islands. And that's very much it for the line work. So sitting here at the bench is a really great way to end my super intensive 2-day trip here on Vancouver Island. I'm happily sketching away all of these nice places that I visited. Okay, so now it's time to paint watercolors for this little landscape. I just wetted the sky and the water area with clear water. First of all, I'm adding a bit of diluted lemon yellow for the reflection of the evening light onto the water, which is very important. And then the key is to keep it diluted. It's not a super intense yellow. For the lower part of the sky, I observed yellow and the thin faded out yellow-orange, a bit of peachy red-orange, and the stronger red closer to the horizon. When I'm painting sky, I always use horizontal brush marks. Whether I'm painting a flat blue sky or an evening sky with stripes of colors. Using horizontal brushstrokes is just easier to blend all of these colors together nice and smooth. Well, it doesn't have to be 100% smooth. Having a slight bit of imperfections in our paintings actually make them look more lively and also more expressive. Alright, so now I am just wetting the beach area with some golden color as well, mostly yellow ochre and a bit of burnt sienna blended in over here. And now I'm ready to get a bit more bold by adding the luminosity of the evening shine. It's kind of like a yellow-orange glaze onto the forest and the houses. And trying to make this value of yellow-orange not too watery and not way too solid either. I want this lightly color to shine through the greens that I'm gonna add on top. And that little island here is facing the setting sun directly, and that's why it's getting more orangey tone. And same as the higher part of the isle there. Yeah, so the higher part of the isle is catching more orangey tones of the sunset sky, which is on my back. I'm looking at the east sky right now, and it's a quiet little beach over here. Not too many people are around, and it's a great place to wind down after 2 super intensive but happily sketching days. Okay, so after waiting for about a couple minutes for the yellows and oranges to dry off a little bit, now I am doing wet onto moist, putting on viridian green mixed with a little bit of yellow ochre, just a tiny bit of yellow ochre, because the viridian green is reacting with the moist yellows and yellow oranges underneath. And just keep punching on this viridian green, or you can use hooker's green, and also mixing a tiny bit of yellow ochre for a variety of organic greens. Yeah, and my brushstroke is very choppy, not covering 100% of the previous layer. and a bit more orangey green here for this wider part of the bay, and some stronger greens for the top. The outline is very sharp. So one of the challenging things about painting watercolors is to translate what you see and observe into these abstract techniques. So over here, I want these greens of the forest to look pretty strong. At the same time, I want the yellow oranges underneath to shine through. So what I'm doing here is the technique of wet onto moist when the yellow oranges are still a little bit wet, not completely dried up and not way too watery either. So the green is slightly faded out, okay, still looking pretty sharp, but not way too harsh. Now I'm gradually adding some very tiny bits of darker values of greens by mixing burnt sienna, just a little bit at a time, into hooker's green or viridian green. Now I'm going to let the little cityscape and the forest up the hill to dry a little bit. Now I want to paint a bit of the water. As you can see, I am holding my brush in about a 45-degree angle, sometimes a little lower, to create these thicker brush strokes. I am using cerulean blue mixed with cobalt blue and diluted with quite a bit of water. I'm also diluting this blue on the paper by squeezing my water brush a little bit and spreading it on the paper area. And for the middle ground and the foreground area, for now, I am still keeping this blue quite diluted. This is super important when we're painting water, is to not add the darkest value of blues or greens or turquoise way too soon. Start very gently and make sure the underpainting of the evening glow underneath the laughing water is all dried. And now I am using hooker's green, diluted just a tiny bit, to paint the reflection of the isle, or the little island here on the right hand side, using very thin brush strokes, which means that I'm holding my brush in almost a 90-degree angle to the paper, mixing in a little bit burnt sienna to darken the value of green, and keep going, trying to really absorb the rhythm of the moving water in front of me, and just project my interpretation onto the paper. And using little segments of these green paint brushstrokes to get the movement of the water done. And as always, I want to be more impressionistic, so I just grab a little bit of yellow orange, mix it with a tiny bit of leftover green to paint the golden glow of the evening atmosphere onto the rippled reflection as well. Now for the foreground lapping water, I'm using a slightly stronger cerulean mixed with cobalt blue, relaxing my hand to push the brushstrokes around. So every single brushstroke is of a little different thickness. And just keep painting on without hesitate too much. As I always mention, you can't really copy, but you're trying to express your personal feelings following the rhythm that you feel in front of you, not just by sight. You're also hearing the laughing water as well. We're trying to use all of our five senses, keep our five senses engaged when we're painting on location. And that's one of the great advantages of painting on location compared to painting from just a visual photograph. And now I'm grabbing some leftover blue to shape the little boat a little bit, some more renderings of the laughing water in the distance, trying to keep the brushstrokes very minimal for the water there in the distance. Because things in the distance, they always look more faded out compared to the middle and foreground. Grabbing a little bit of orange mixed with burnt sienna to add more definitions for the beach and the bushy area here in the foreground. Grabbing some hooker's green and also 90-degree angle holding the brush to paint these grass blades. And yeah, when I'm painting these grass blades, just like the drawing process, yeah, most of the time I'm starting from the bottom of these grass blades and just swipe the brush up. Yeah, and yeah, just keep the swiping really fun and relaxing. Some more here on the bottom corner. Alright, so now I feel that the bottom part of this sketch, it needs more weight, which means that it needs more shade colors around the root area of the grass blades. So here I'm using orange brown and also some slightly more defined brush strokes. You have to be bold to add shade or contrast. Alright, this is a play of burnt sienna and a tiny bit of raw umber, maybe a slight bit of blue. There are slight bits of raised areas or elevated areas here on the beach, and that's why I'm using these darker and also less diluted values of browns. Alright, so now I'm going to keep going to punch on some even darker sepia, dark sepia colors in between these grass blades here on the bottoms. And at the same time, don't worry too much about using too many colors or brush strokes. We do need brush strokes to show texture, especially here, this rough area of the rocky, the sandy, and the grassy beach area. So I feel like trying to make everything look super smooth is a way to make an image look way too static. So yeah, don't be afraid of making slightly rough brush marks for textures and also for personal expression as well. Adding some more stronger hooker screen for the grass blades and slightly darker values in between the trees there in the distance. So now I sense higher contrast for the aisle there in the distance. So here I am mixing even more burnt sienna into hooker screen just for these tips of the trees here on top of the aisle. And using the residue over here for the middle part. Yeah, again, the outline of some of the trees are super sharp because of this dramatic time of the day, the lighting condition. The contrast is very sharp. Right, and just cleaned my brush to grab a leftover diluted blue for this thin little piece of cloud drifting close to the horizon to add a sense of distance. And that's it. Here's the look of my afternoon on Vancouver Island before catching the last ferry of the day home. And thank you so much for watching this video, everyone. I'm on my way to the ferries. Again, if you like this video, please click like and leave me a comment below. Subscribe to my channel for weekly updates. And I will see you again very soon next time. I am happily tired. Bye everyone. Enjoy your day.